That night felt different. Aaron, home from college, entered my room. His gaze lingered. I should have stopped it, but I didn't. Silence, my usual form of love, felt inadequate now that he was 19. He was taller, his voice deeper, and he looked at me differently, trying to understand me. I hadn't told him I was gay, afraid to shatter his distant admiration. December was quiet. Snow fell. Aaron sat closer, legs brushing mine, asking unexpected questions. Then his hand brushed my shoulder, a touch that lingered. Was it innocent? I couldn't stop thinking about it, questioning his lingering glances and softened goodnights that I noticed, and I looked up. He was already walking away, pretending nothing had happened. Or maybe it really was nothing. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I kept telling myself I was reading too much into things, that he was just being sweet. Maybe the distance between us had softened during his time away. But sometimes when I caught his eyes watching me just a second too long, or when his voice lowered when he said goodnight, I didn't know what to make of it. I didn't want to believe what I was beginning to suspect. Not because I was afraid of him, but because I was afraid of myself. But then night came. That night I was more tired than usual. I didn't even hear him turn off the television. The last thing I remembered was the warmth of the blankets and the soft creak of the old bed frame. As I shifted onto my side, the house had its own sounds, but they had always been familiar, almost comforting. I drifted off fast, lulled by the weight of sleep and the faint scent of pine still lingering from the wreath on the front door. But sometime during the night something stirred. Not a sound but a feeling. That strange sixth sense that someone else is in the room. My eyes fluttered open for a second, but the room was dark. I blinked and saw the outline of a figure standing near the doorway. My heart didn't leap, didn't race. Somewhere I already knew it was him. "Aaron," I murmured, barely audible. He didn't answer right away. Then I heard the floorboard creak softly and his voice came low. "Sorry, I didn't mean to wake you." I sat up slowly, rubbing my eyes. "Is something wrong?" He was standing still, wearing only a thin t-shirt and loose plaid pajama pants. His hair was messy from sleep and he looked small, not in size but in spirit. "I had a weird dream," he said, his voice quieter now. "I don't know. I just didn't want to be alone." It had been years since he'd come to me like this. The last time I remembered was when he was 8 and had a fever so high he hallucinated shadows on the walls. But now his voice wasn't childlike. It was hushed, vulnerable, but older, measured. "You want to sit?" I asked, scooting over slightly. He didn't hesitate. The mattress dipped beneath his weight as he sat on the edge of the bed, his hands clasped together tightly in his lap. He stared forward, not at me, just at the dark. "I keep having dreams I can't explain," he whispered. "And I don't even know what they mean, but they leave this feeling." "What kind of feeling?" I asked, careful not to sound too curious. He shook his head. "Like I want something but I'm not allowed to want it." Those words landed like a soft thud in my chest, but there was much yet to come. We didn't speak for a while after that, just sat there. I could feel his breathing slow. I could feel the warmth of his body, the tension in his shoulders. Every nerve in me was awake now, alert, but I didn't move. I couldn't because something about that moment felt like a balance on the edge of something dangerous and unspoken. And if I moved the wrong way it would tip. Eventually he looked over at me. His eyes found mine in the dark, and something passed between us that didn't have a name. "Do you ever wish things had gone differently?" he asked. I blinked slowly, unsure how to answer. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," he said. "Just if things could have been more honest between us." I didn't know if he meant the years of silence or something else entirely. But the air between us was thick now, heavy with what neither of us said. And still he didn't leave. Still he sat there, his thigh brushing mine, his hands slowly unclenching. But that night wasn't over yet, and neither of us could pretend that whatever line had always existed between father and son hadn't begun to blur the moment he walked into that room. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The hum of the radiator kicked in softly, warming the silence, and Aaron shifted slightly on the edge of the bed, but he didn't stand up. His fingers grazed the edge of the comforter, curling and uncurling like he was searching for something to hold on to. Maybe words, maybe courage. I couldn't tell. "I didn't mean to scare you," he said after a while. His voice hushed, almost apologetic. I couldn't go back to sleep. Bad dream? I asked, though I already knew that wasn't the whole truth. Not with the way he kept glancing toward me, not quite meeting my eyes. He nodded. Yeah, something like that. I wanted to believe him, wanted to take that answer, tuck it away, and treat the moment like what it should have been. A late-night visit from a son to his father, just needing comfort. But there was something else in the way he sat there. Something too still, too intentional. Like this wasn't an accident. Like he'd been waiting for this moment longer than I realized. I leaned back into the pillows, trying to appear calm, even though my chest felt tight. Do you want to talk about it? He hesitated. Not really. His hand brushed against my leg as he adjusted, the touch barely there, but it lingered in my skin like warmth from a candle's flame. I told myself it was nothing. That moment only felt heavy because I hadn't been touched in a long time. Not intimately, not meaningfully. Loneliness does that to a man. Makes you read into things. Makes the smallest gestures echo too loudly in a quiet room. He turned his face toward me, and even in the darkness, I could see the reflection of the hallway light in his eyes. Do you ever feel like you miss something? He asked. My breath caught. What do you mean? Like life gave you the wrong script. Like you spent so long trying to play your part that you forgot who you were supposed to be. The words hit harder than he knew. Or maybe he did know. Maybe he'd known more than I gave him credit for. I admitted softly, the confession slipping past my lips before I could stop it. For a long time. He nodded almost like he'd expected that. I think about that a lot about you. His voice was gentle, almost affectionate, too affectionate. And suddenly I couldn't look at him. I turned my gaze toward the ceiling, pretending to notice the shadow of the ceiling fan spinning slowly above us, pretending the air didn't feel heavier now, like something invisible had pressed into the room. I thought I knew who I was, Aaron whispered. But being away, being on my own, I started thinking about everything differently. About how I grew up, about who I learned to be. I swallowed, trying to keep my voice steady. That's normal. College does that. It makes you look at everything you thought was true and question it. Yeah, he said, almost smiling. Exactly. He slid a little further up the bed, close enough now that our shoulders were almost touching. I felt the shift in weight behind me, the presence of him, and the scent of his skin, clean like soap, and the faintest trace of his cologne. I hadn't been this close to him in years, and I hated that I noticed. I don't think I ever really saw you before, he said, his voice quieter now, like he was talking to himself. Not really. You always seemed distant, like part of you was somewhere else. Maybe I was. I admitted it felt dangerous to be this honest, but something about the darkness made it easier, like the rules changed at night, like whatever truths lived between us only knew how to breathe when no one else was watching. I get it now, he added. That feeling of hiding things. It's exhausting. I turned then just slightly enough to meet his gaze. Aaron, I'm not judging you, he said quickly, gently. I'm just trying to understand. I think I've always wanted to. That's when I realized this wasn't just a visit. This wasn't about a dream. Aaron had come here for something he couldn't say out loud. And I was terrified that I understood exactly what it was. He reached across the space between us slowly, carefully, and let his hand rest lightly on my forearm. It was innocent. Innocent enough, but it didn't feel that way. Not with the way his fingers stayed there. Not with the way he looked at me. Not with the way I didn't move. I should have pulled away. I should have laughed it off or shifted or said something to break the moment. But I didn't, because part of me was frozen. Because part of me didn't want to. His thumb moved slightly, just a soft, aimless stroke across my skin, and my body betrayed me with a shiver I couldn't hide. You felt it? I know he did, because he didn't let go. You're shaking, he whispered. It's cold, I lied. We both knew it wasn't. He moved even closer now, our legs almost brushing beneath the blankets. I could feel the warmth of him through the thin barrier of fabric, and it felt dangerous, like standing too close to a flame, knowing you'll get burned but not caring anymore. You don't have to pretend around me, he said. And I didn't know if he was talking about my sexuality or this moment or both. But the truth was, I didn't know how to pretend anymore. Not when his voice was that soft. Not when the weight of him was inches away, and my body was betraying every thought in my head. The room was too still, the quiet too loud. My throat felt dry, but I didn't move to get water. I just stared at him, at the way his face looked so calm, so sure, while mine felt like it was cracking from the inside. "I should go," he said, though he didn't move. I nodded faintly. "Okay," but he didn't go. "Not yet." He looked at me again, and in that moment I felt like everything between us had shifted. Not into something wrong, not exactly, but into something neither of us had words for. And maybe that was the scariest part of all, because he wasn't leaving and I wasn't asking him to. Not yet. The morning came like any other, but everything felt different. The sun streamed in through the kitchen window, hitting the same familiar spots on the table, warming the counter where the coffee pot hissed to life. But somehow the light felt heavier. Or maybe it was just me. Aaron was already up, standing barefoot in front of the fridge, shirt slightly wrinkled, hair messy, like he hadn't slept much either. I waited for the awkward glance, the subtle shift in his eyes that might acknowledge what had passed between us the night before. But there was nothing. He smiled casual, maybe a little too casual, as he held up the orange juice. "Want some?" he asked. "Yeah, thanks," I said, voice level, though my chest was far from calm. He poured 2 glasses without looking, handed one to me, then leaned back against the counter. For a moment we drank in silence, both pretending this was just another day. But the space between us was different now, denser, as if the walls remembered something we were both trying to forget. I thought he'd act strange, pull away, keep his distance like any kid would after crossing a line that couldn't be named. But no, he was closer, more present. When I opened the dishwasher, he stepped beside me to help. When I reached for the dish towel, his fingers brushed mine again, and this time neither of us flinched. He asked me about work, about clients I hadn't mentioned in years, about things that made me pause and wonder if he'd always wanted to know, or if he was just trying to stay close to me in a way that didn't raise suspicion. It was subtle, but I felt it in every glance that held too long. Every laugh that came too easily, every quiet moment he chose not to leave. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was assigning meaning where there was none, that this was just a father finally reconnecting with his son after years of quiet distance. But as the hours passed and he stayed near, finding reasons to linger in the same room, asking me about the books I read, the music I listened to, the things I never thought he noticed, I knew better. Something had shifted between us. I tried to bury myself in work, sat at the dining table with my laptop open, eyes scanning meaningless emails, fingers typing half-formed thoughts I'd never send. But my mind wouldn't stop returning to the way his hand had rested on mine in the dark. The way he hadn't pulled away, the way he'd said, "You don't have to pretend to be around me." And I didn't know if he meant me pretending to be straight or pretending not to notice him. That night, I stayed up later than usual, scrolling through the same news headlines I'd already read, hoping exhaustion would push the thoughts from my head. The house had gone still, the kind of silence that used to feel comforting, but now just left too much room for my imagination to wander. And then I heard it, the soft creak of the hallway floor. My door wasn't closed. I hadn't closed it in years. But now I wished I had. Or maybe I didn't. He stepped in like it wasn't the second time, like it was just something we did now. No hesitation, no explanation. He wore the same loose pajamas, but he wasn't shivering or rubbing his arms this time. He wasn't pretending to be scared of the dark. "You're still awake," he said. "I could say the same about you," I replied, my voice quiet, not accusing. He came closer, this time without stopping at the edge of the bed. He sat down again like he belonged there, like the room had always been his just as much as mine. "Couldn't sleep," he said. "Mind won't shut up." I nodded slowly, folding the corner of the blanket between my fingers. "Yeah, I know the feeling." He looked at me, then really looked. Not the way a son looks at his father, but the way someone does when they're searching for something, for truth, for permission. "Do you ever wonder?" he said softly. "What would have been different if we'd talked more when I was growing up?" I looked at him, then at the shadow of my nightstand lamp against the wall, unsure how to answer without unraveling both of us. "I do," I admitted, "more than you think." He tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "Why didn't we?" I exhaled. I think I was afraid I'd mess it up. What if I said too much? You'd see me differently. He didn't speak right away then. Would that have been such a bad thing? His voice was steady, but his eyes told a different story. He was afraid too. Not of me, but of whatever this was becoming, of what it meant. Of how far it could go before someone finally named it. Aaron, I said gently, but the word felt like it belonged to someone else. What are you doing? He didn't flinch, didn't retreat. Instead, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, hands clasped, gaze unwavering. I don't know, he said honestly. I just know I feel different around you now. Not in a bad way, just different. I swallowed hard. You don't have to explain. Don't I? He asked, more to himself than to me. Because I've been walking around all day feeling like I'm carrying something in my chest that doesn't belong there, and it started last night. He reached up, brushing his fingers through his hair like he was trying to shake the thought away, but it stayed. His hand dropped to the bed between us, open, resting palm up. I'm not trying to confuse you, he said. I'm just trying to be honest for once. My heart pounded loud enough that I was sure he could hear it, but I didn't take his hand. I didn't move at all. I just watched it rest there like a question I didn't know how to answer. You said you used to hide, he added. Are you still hiding now? That was the moment I began to realize this wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a passing thought in his mind or a slip in judgment. He knew maybe not everything. Maybe not the full truth of what he was stirring in me, but enough. Enough to see the cracks in my silence. Enough to know something unspoken lived in the air between us, and he wasn't afraid to breathe it in. And I didn't know whether I wanted him to stop or keep going. But that was just the beginning. The house had long since settled into its nighttime hush. The heat clicked on and off with its usual rhythm, and the wind outside moved faintly through the trees, brushing against the windows like it wanted to. I had drifted into a shallow sleep, one of those half-aware states where your body rests, but your mind still floats, still listens. Somewhere in the haze I heard it again. The soft creak of the hallway floor, then the gentler sound of my door shifting open. I didn't move. A part of me wanted to believe I was dreaming. Another part, the part that had been restless for days, had already begun to wake. I felt him before I saw him. His presence was becoming familiar now, like a shadow I no longer feared. Aaron stepped inside, closing the door behind him more quietly than before. But tonight something was different. The air around him didn't carry hesitation anymore. There was no nervous shuffle, no pretend excuse about a bad dream, no lie to coat whatever truth he was holding inside. He walked with intention, quiet but steady, his eyes already on me. The hallway light was off this time. Only the faint glow from the moon behind the curtains illuminated the room, casting faint silver outlines across the bed, the wall, and his frame. And yet, I could feel his gaze like a hand against my skin. I shifted slightly in bed, not fully rising, not speaking. I didn't know what I'd say even if I had. He didn't ask if I was awake. He already knew. Aaron came to the side of the bed again, slower now, more careful, like something sacred hung in the air between us, and one wrong movement might shatter it. I couldn't stop thinking, he said softly, voice closer than I expected. Even after last night, even after today, I opened my eyes fully then, letting them adjust to the low light. He was sitting now, one leg folded beneath him, the other hanging off the side of the bed. So close, so warm. He looked down at the blanket between us, then let out a breath that trembled just slightly before he caught it. I know I'm not supposed to be here, he said. I know this doesn't make sense, but I can't keep pretending anymore. His words hung there, heavy and fragile all at once. My throat was dry. My chest felt too tight, like I hadn't taken a full breath since he walked in. You don't have to say anything, he added quickly, almost afraid I'd reject him. Just let me stay. I should have told him no. I should have asked him to leave, to go back to bed, to forget whatever this was. But the truth I didn't want to name was that I didn't want him to go. I hadn't wanted him to leave the night before either. I'd just been too afraid to admit it. He moved again, this time sitting fully on the bed, legs crossed, facing me. I keep asking myself why I'm doing this, he said. Why do I keep coming in here like it's normal? Like you won't say anything? And the only answer I have is that I want to be near you. I looked at him, then really looked, and I saw it. The vulnerability hiding behind his eyes, the years of silent questions he'd never dared to ask, the way his shoulders carried weight I hadn't noticed before. And still he waited for me to speak, to tell him this was wrong, to stop him. But I didn't. Instead, I sat up slowly, pushing the blanket aside just enough to make room. He didn't hesitate. He slid in next to me without a word, his body warm against mine, our arms brushing beneath the covers. We didn't touch. Not yet. But the electricity was already there, alive and burning in the space where skin almost met skin. I used to wish you'd open up more, he said, voice low. I used to wonder what was going on in your head. Why you always seemed so far away. And now that I'm older, I think I understand. It wasn't far. It was silent. It was you trying to protect something. I turned to him, my voice quieter than a whisper. I didn't want to burden you with who I am. His eyes met mine, unwavering. You didn't. You never could. I didn't know when his hand reached for mine. It just happened. 1 second there was space between us, and the next his fingers were sliding over mine beneath the blanket. Curling gently, holding, not grabbing, not taking, just being there. And I let him. The silence returned, but it was a different kind of quiet. One that felt alive, like it was waiting for us to do something with it. I felt his thumb move against my hand, slow, steady, and my breath caught in my chest. Then he spoke, barely audible. Is this wrong? I closed my eyes. I don't know, I whispered back. But it doesn't feel like it is. He leaned his head against my shoulder, and I didn't move away. His hand tightened around mine, and for the first time in years, I felt truly held, seen, known, accepted. I felt his warm, hesitant lips on my jaw. Just once, enough to change everything. Aaron, I started, unable to finish. Something inside me had crossed the line. He looked into my eyes. I know what you're afraid of, but I'm not confused. It's real. He leaned in, and I didn't stop him. Our lips met, soft at first, then deepening as I responded. His hand rested on my chest, grounding himself. I kissed him back, not like a father but like someone starved. Quiet, aching, full of unspoken things. Our closeness felt both terrifying and necessary, suspending us in time. When we parted, he stayed close, forehead to mine. Whatever this is, he whispered, I don't want to forget it. And I knew we couldn't. Morning light touched us gently. Aaron's head was on my shoulder, his arm over my waist. I hadn't moved. My heart beat beneath him, uncertain. What happens now? The ceiling was the same, but we had changed. He didn't stir. I watched him. I should have felt guilt, but I felt something deeper. Peace, confusion, vulnerability, connection. Not lust, but intimacy. He shifted, his eyes found mine, unreadable but calm. Morning, he said. Morning, I replied. I wasn't sure you'd still be here. Neither was I. He sat up. I've been trying to figure out what last night meant. Me neither. It felt like I was finally seeing you, not just as my dad, but as a person. Grief for what we'd lost. Aaron, I began. I'm not asking you to fix anything, just to be honest. I felt something growing between us since I came home. I felt it too. What happens now? I asked. I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe we figure it out. I needed to anchor myself. I spent so many years hiding. You haven't done anything wrong. You let yourself be seen. He took my hand. I don't know what this is, but I want to understand you. Okay. Silence. Acknowledgement. The morning light grew brighter. He left, his expression soft. I stayed, my heart racing. We hadn't spoken of love or desire. But something had passed between us. I didn't tell him to forget it. A part of me needed to know what it was. Aaron had left, but he wasn't done. Neither was I. It was the beginning. So what now? I don't have the answer. But if you do, tell me. I'll be reading every comment.